It's my understanding, and this is totally unrelated, that Turkey has now bombed targets inside of Iraq. And I want them to know that somebody in this country is watching. Like today, as we sit here, it's happening. And that's just intolerable, and I hope that they take notice of the fact that we've taken notice. Back on subject matter at hand. Has any provision been made to ensure ballot access for displaced peoples in the upcoming election?
Representative, that's one of the things I mentioned that was one of our concerns, was the ability to have elections amongst all the displaced people. So yes, absolutely, that is a concern, and that is an issue that the embassy is following.
But I believe your exact reference was to IDPs, correct?
So
and we're on the same team here, right? I mean, I think I want to advance the same agenda you do, which is free and fair elections in Nigeria,
absolutely.
in Nigeria where people are tolerant of one another. So I'm grateful that the answer is yes, but do you have any idea what percentage of the people who are refugees attempting to cross the Mediterranean right now are Nigerian or from the Lake Chad region?
Do you? I'm sorry, I don't. We can check on that and get back to you.
I don't want you to have to do that, but would you concede, and again, we're on the same team here,
Yeah.
would you concede that there's a significant number of displaced people from the Lake Chad region in Nigeria who are moving north and even trying to cross the Mediterranean?
I would suspect yes.
And so these people essentially, and again, I'm on your team here.
Yeah.
It's my training as a prosecutor, so I want you to know that this is not adversarial. But these people aren't going to have an opportunity to vote, right? They're voiceless. No. And if we want to create a Nigeria where people can live side by side, regardless of ethnicity or religious differences, these people won't have a say in shaping a future if they ever choose to return, right? I mean, it's
that would be problematic. I did want to say that with some countries, and I'm not sure if Nigeria is one of them, that they will allow voting at their embassies for their expatriate populations. But like I said, I'm not sure what the rules are in Nigeria.
Well, that might be something that I would ask you guys to look into, right? I think that's a great idea. We know, the ports of debarkation of a lot of these refugees. And if we could, even if a handful of displaced Nigerians who are not internally displaced were able to go to an embassy or consulate and vote, that'd be awesome, right? Do we know of any specific efforts by Fulani militants or Boko Haram to disrupt the election, the electoral process?
No specific information, but I am sure that that would be an aspirational goal of theirs.
Now I'm going to walk the dog backwards a little bit. And do we know any nation states or entities contained within definable nation states that might be responsible for funding of Fulani militants or Boko Haram?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I absolutely do not.
Yeah, and again, it's probably beyond your purview, but you get it. I mean, all this stuff sort of lays on top.
Not nation states, absolutely not.
So there are no Middle Eastern countries that you can speak to that we can track funding Boko Haram or Fulani?
No.
Okay. And digging a little bit deeper down into the stuff that matters to the election, but not directly election related. Has Boko Haram pledged allegiance to ISIS?
Mm-hmm. There's two parts of Boko Haram. They have both pledged allegiance to ISIS, but when Boko Haram broke into two in 2016, ISIS went with the breakoff unit that we now call ISIS West Africa. The original Boko Haram has been kind of pushed aside by ISIS, and they're the least effective of the two branches.
Right, and I want to tell you that I ask questions sometimes that I do know the answer to, not to make you look bad, but to make sure that somewhere there's a video record of the fact that somebody in this country is tracking this. And tragically, the word ISIS tends to move U.S. foreign policy, and when you have things like Boko Haram acting as a bad actor, not just in interfering with elections, but interfering with life itself, that if we can tag them with their ISIS allies, maybe the global community will feel more compelled to act, which dovetails with my next question, which is rather informal, but I believe it was about 4 years ago that President and Mrs. Obama took part in the Bring Back Our Girls hashtag campaign, right? Mm-hmm. But this last April, it would have been 4 years, that's what happened to it? And I know it's not within your official responsibility. What's going on there?
I'm not sure how many of the girls have been retrieved. Do you?
It's my understanding, but through just reading reports, that the majority, if not all, of those girls have been returned through various means. However, there have been other kidnappings, and so there are numerous issues throughout Northeast and the Middle Belt, of course.
One of us is right and one of us is wrong, and I'm not saying this because I think you're wrong. I could be wrong, right into the camera. But my understanding is that about half the girls have still not been retrieved. And I guess the global community has sort of moved on to the next big hashtag. That's in no way, shape, or form to impugn anyone. I thank Mrs. and Mr. Obama, President Obama, for their activity to that end, but I won't forget about these human beings who are living, in my understanding, many cases in forced marriages, who've been subject to violence to include rape. And again, the reason sometimes I ask questions I know the answer to is if somebody hopefully can metaphorically weaponize this video to say the United States is still freaking watching, and that we won't tolerate regimes that tolerate entities that do this to their subjects, to human beings.
Also, Representative, may I add, there was a second kidnapping from Dapchi, and all of those girls have been returned with the sole exception of one.
Super. Thank you. And again, I'm on the same team as you guys, trying to work within my responsibilities in this branch of government while you do yours from yours. The other thing that strikes me as sort of tragic is there's a debate in the global news community on the number of people killed in the herder-farmer violence and the Fulani militant movements, Boko Haram movements, and there's a debate as to the proportion of those killed. And so I believe someone affiliated with the administration said 60,000 Christians have been killed by Muslim radicals, yada, yada, yada. Now, I know that the good guys and the bad guys weaponize information for propaganda purposes. Do we have a number on the people who've been killed, and do you have any idea as to the proportion of who's been killed? I know that both sides have lost people, and every human life has value, but what sort of numbers do you have on that?
The best number I can give you, this year up to now has been about 1,300 directly in the herder-farmer violence. I do not have the proportion breakout as to who was who.
I'm sorry, this year 1,500?
1,300 this year.
Okay.
But that is just the Middle Belt violence. That is not anything related to Boko Haram or anything like that. That's just that. And again, those numbers I also understand are very problematic.
Right.
Because
well, I'm asking you for your best guess, knowing that at least nobody that I can find knows the real answer.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best I can give you. And like I said, we can get a breakout as to who's who. But my
Has
view
the
of
violence and bloodshed disproportionately affected the Christians in the South? Is that because my understanding is it has, but there's literally arguments from AFP and other legitimate news outlets saying we don't really know who the dead people are. Has it been disproportionately levied against one community by another, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I am not certain. I would guess that disproportionately there have been more farmers killed than herders. Okay. That's from my experience.
Again, I'm not, this isn't
That's
gotcha.
my experience, not
right.
my direct knowledge.
Sure. Mr. Day, anything to flesh that out? And I know there are no right answers, there are no wrong answers. I'm trying to gather information, having already tried to gather information and bounce what I've heard off of what you guys got.
Mm-hmm. My impressions are the same. So.
Okay, when we shape policy, you know, and again, the vast bulk of American foreign policy is going to come out of the executive branch, rightly so. But when we shape policy, we have to shape it with the right information, right? And this is not me finger wagging at you guys. And I get frustrated because this body, good members like Ms. Bass, who's left now, and Mr. Smith, if we can't get the right information, we can't formulate the right legislative policy to support the executive implementation of foreign policy. So we could do this all day long. Again, I'm on your team. This is an adversary. We could do this all day long in Nigeria. We can work our way up into South Sudan, and then we can move up across the Sinai into Syria and Iraq and go over to Burma. And it's just, so the ignorance is literally, if you live in Nigeria or any number of other places, deadly. So just venting. Thank you guys immensely, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.